Hello and welcome to another episode. In today's episode, developers, we are going to be taking a look at CSS Flexbox. But before we get started, if you're new to my channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. And also, remember to hit that ring bell. That way you will always get notified as soon as I upload a video. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so to get started on CSS Flexbox, I need you guys to open the same website we've been using so far, which is w3schools.com. You're going to go into the CSS section and you're going to scroll down all the way to where it says CSS Advanced. You're going to then find the topic called CSS Flexbox, which is this one right here. Okay, in addition to this, I need you to have also opened the welcome page, the one that we have been working so far with. In my case, I do have our previous chapter here, the content of our previous chapter, and I also have opened Visual Studio Code. Now, as you notice, what I'm going to do now, it's clear all that it's on this website, just so that we can have a clean file and something that we can work with as of now. So let's do that. Let me just erase the divisions we added, and I am also going to delete all the style. So I'm going to hit save here, and I also am going to hit save here. There we go. So now let's hit refresh, and boom, we have a clean website. Okay, so going back to our topic today. So CSS Flexbox. This is something very important that you should learn, because the Flexbox, it's a property that is going to help you control the layout. Okay, and specifically the Flexbox property is very important, because instead of using the float or the positioning properties, you are going to be able to control the content itself just with the property Flexbox. So let me give you a quick example in how this works. Okay, in order for you to have a Flexbox and in order for you to use this property, first of all, you have to go ahead and make sure that you have a container to work with, okay? Which is the first thing that we're going to go ahead and actually add right now. So for this example, we're going to use the same that we see here on W3 Schools. If you want, you can try it out by clicking try it yourself, but I'll just do it on the on Visual Studio Code so you can see it in our actual website, okay? So let me open here Visual Studio Code. Okay, so the first thing we are going to do, let me see if we can set up a division. Okay, so what I'm gonna do right now is add a div. Okay, now this div is going to have a class. Let's have a class for this div, and we're going to call it Flex Container. Okay, so flex and then container. There you go. That's how we are going to name it. And then inside of this division, we are going to have something else. We're going to have other elements inside of this division, okay, which are going to be child elements, by the way. So let's add other divisions. Okay, so let's do 3. Just so that you can see all 3 divs in here. And we're going to put the numbers 1, 2, and then 3 finally. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is hit save. Going back to our code, let's see if we have added them successfully. Yep, there we go. So we have 1, 2, and 3. So remember, this is the parent, the first division, and we have a class for it and named it as Flex Container. And then we have inside childs of this parent, which is division 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so far so good. I hope you're understanding, but if you're not, you can leave your questions in the comment section below and I'll reply as soon as I can. Okay, so going to our style, now we want to see what this Flexbox is and how this Flex Container works, etc., etc. So we're going to apply a little bit of style to this. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is use the Flex Container. Okay, and let's go ahead and add some style. We're going to set the display to flex, okay? This is the one that we are going to use. And in addition to set this display to flex, let's give it a background color as well. And I'm just going to make it, I'll just make it blue violet, because why not, right? Okay, so let's hit save, going back to our welcome page, refresh. Whoops, 1 second here. I'm going to hit save, and let me make sure I spelled this down correctly. In fact, you see here, I said container, and here I added an additional I, so that's why the code was not working. So let's erase that I. Now let's hit save. Going back to our code, let's hit refresh. Very important for you to check if you don't have any typos, because remember that the code and the style doesn't work if we do an error just like the one I just did right now. Okay, so just watch out on that. Okay, so now we have applied a background color to this. Now what we're going to do is use the same flex container, and here we're going to use an operator. We're going to use the greater than operator. Okay, so let's use that one, greater than operator. And then this is going to be applied to all childs of this parent. So meaning that to everything that is, if all the divisions are not greater than this flex containers, we'll have this style applied to them. Meaning, in other words, this is going to be, this operator is going to be applying the style to all the childs of the parent, which is the flex container. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, remember, questions below. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and now give a background color to this. And the background color is going to be, let's do it white. Okay, let's just play it simple. And then we are going to set up a margin. And the margin that I want for this one, let's just do 10 pixels, same as the example that you will probably see on W3 Schools. And then we're going to add some padding of, let's do 20 pixels. And finally, let's just add a font size to this. Okay, and let's make it 30 pixels, same as the example that you will see at W3 Schools if you hit the try now button. Okay, so I have added all this style to all the childs of this parent, so I'm going to hit save. Going back to our code, let's hit refresh, and boom, now we have some style applied to the childs of the parent. So this is the flex container, the purple one, okay, the violet. This is the container. And then inside of that container, which the container is the parent, as I have repeated over and over again so far now, then inside of the container, we have the childs, which is number 1, 2, and 3, okay, which are the ones that we just styled right now by using this operator symbol, okay? So far so good. Now you know that this is a Flexbox, which has a container, and inside of that container, you have some child, which are the elements that we see here, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so simple as that. You have created now your first Flexbox. Now let's take a look and go back at W3 School so that we can learn a little bit more about this Flexbox. The Flexbox, as I said, right now it has a flex container. So let's click here on the module CSS flex container. Okay, so going there, the parent element, which is the container, as I just explained to you right now, is this blue area in W3 Schools, and then it has 3 flex items, which are the childs 1, 2, and 3. Okay, now this flex container has properties, and the properties that they have are flex direction, flex wrap, flex flow, justify content, align items, and align content. Now I'm going to try to explain all of them for you as quick as we can, okay? But for this, I really need you to open your code, because we're going to be working there on the code that we have. And let's go ahead and actually work with the first one, which is the direction. You will see exactly what can we do to our code. But to start with this, we're going to style our child. Let's see if we can just give it maybe a width to our child, okay? Just to use the direction property. But first, let me tell you what the direction property is. So the direction property, as it says here, it defines in which direction the container wants to stack all the flex item. So the flex direction property tells you whether you want all the items on the container to go either vertical or horizontal, okay? That's what the flex direction does. Now, let me go ahead and give you an example right now. Let's go back to our code. We have the 3 items, and as you can see them right now in here is 1, 2, 3. They have been ordered horizontal because by default, that's the way it's ordered, okay? Now, I want to change this and I want to make them go vertical. So in order for us to do this, and in order for you to see it, we're going to add a little bit more style to the child here, and also to the flex container itself, okay? So to the flex container, we are going to set up a flex direction, okay? And now this flex direction is gonna go in column because it's gonna go vertical. So for it to go vertical, you use the column value, okay? Now, in the flex container, in the child elements, we're going to be adding, let's add a width, and this width, we're gonna make it 100 pixels. And let's also give it, well, it already has a margin. Let me see, what else? Let's align the text, okay? Let's align the text. Just, let's give some text alignment here. And let's make it to the center, just so that everything is a little bit more organized, okay? So, with this, we're also gonna set up probably one more thing, and it's going to be, let's see, the line height. The line height. Okay, so the line height, let's see, we're going to give it a font size, so let's do 70 pixels. Or just 75, same as the example that you'll see at W3 Schools. Okay, let's hit save. Going back to our welcome page. See, right now it's horizontal. So now as soon as I hit refresh, it goes vertical because we just applied the flex direction column. Now, the flex direction has other values that you can add in here. Let's go back to our module. As you can see, you don't only can use column, you can also use column reverse. Now, what this column reverse does is that it reorders the item. Instead of going 1, 2, 3, it'll go from start down, and then it'll go all the way up. So it'll go 3, 2, 1. It's going to reverse the order of the items that you just see right now. So let's go ahead and try it out. So here, instead of column, we're going to call this column reverse. Okay, now we're gonna save this. Going back to our code. See, right now it's 1, 2, 3. As soon as I hit refresh, it's now 3, 2, and 1. Simple as that. You have used the column reverse property. Now we can not only use column reverse and column, we also have other values here. Let's see. Let's try this one, the column row. This is to make the flex direction go horizontal, okay? So if you want to look all the items horizontally, you're gonna use the flex direction row. So let's do that. Right now it's a column. Now let's make it a row. Let's hit save, going back to our code, hit refresh, and boom, now it goes horizontal. Same thing if you want to use the row reverse property. It does have a reverse, a row reverse value here. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit refresh, and boom, you see now it rearranges to 3, 2, 1. So the order has changed because we are using row reverse. Okay, so in terms of the flex direction property, I guess that's what you pretty much need to know. If you want to find more about this property, you can go into W3 Schools and read a little bit more that section. Now let's move on to the next one, which is the flex wrap property. Okay, now to use a flex wrap property, we're gonna have to add more divisions because we only have 3, and this example is showing 12. So let's go ahead and add the same amount that the example has. Okay, so let's do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so now we're gonna change the numbers here. So this is gonna be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, let's do 11 and then 12. Hitting save now, going back here, refresh. Okay, so right now we have the column reverse, the row reverse property applied. That's why you see 12, 11, 10, you know, going from the biggest to the lowest numbers. So we're gonna change that. I'm going to remove the flow direction reverse, okay? We're going to remove this right now. Let's hit save and allow me just one moment. Okay, so what I'm gonna do right now is go back to the website and hit refresh, and there you go. So we just have removed that. Now let me show you something. If I try to rearrange this, see, it doesn't wrap up. If I just resize the window, it'll go to number from 1 to 6. Okay, and that's it. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't show you a text wrap like the one that we use in the notepad, right? So in order for you to make all these numbers wrap, instead of just, you know, being hidden or just being extended in the same window when the window is short, then we're going to use the text, the flex wrap property, so that you can see this. So in order for you to see this, I am going to apply it right now. So let's do that. Now we're going to apply the flex wrap property, and we are going to use a property here because we have a couple of values for this wrap property. Okay, so if we just use wrap, let's use it. Then let's hit save, going back to our code, refresh. It's going to wrap up the numbers here, you see? Now if I go ahead and I resize my window, it's wrapping up all the items inside of this container. Now, another property that you will see is the no wrap property, okay? So if we use the no wrap property, we hit save, we hit refresh, it doesn't wrap anymore, you see? It goes back to the default value that you saw before, but in this case, I mean, you can just simply set it up as no wrap as well, and it'll do the same thing. If you just want to use that property, that value, that's also something you can do. Okay, now another thing you can do is do the wrap reverse, same as the column and the rows. You can go ahead and do wrap reverse, and this is going to change the order from the highest to the lowest value. Okay, so let's do wrap reverse. Okay, let's hit save, and going back to our code, let's see how this rearranges. Boom, now we have it filtered in a different order, you see? Okay, so that's another thing that you can do when you are using the display flex and the flex wrap property. Okay, now we are going to take a look at the flex flow property. Now the flex flow property is a shorthand property for setting up both the direction and the flex wrap. So if you don't want to write those two properties in a separate line of code, you can simply use flex flow, and this will let you set up the direction and the wrap of your flex items. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's use it. Let's make a flex flow. Let's remove this first so that you can see it doesn't have any style anymore. Let's hit refresh, and boom, now we don't have any style there for the flex anymore. And now we're going to use the flex flow property. So let's do flex flow. Okay, and what I want to do is set this up as a row, and the example gives them the row a wrap. So let's do row, and then let's do wrap. So this is going to make all the items go horizontally, and then it's also going to make them wrap. Okay, so now let's save it. Going back to our code, let's refresh, and boom, now they have been rearranged because they now can wrap, and at the same time you have been ordered them horizontally with a row value. Okay, perfect. So with that, you have a clear understanding now of the flex flow property. Now here we're going to take a look at another property, which is called justify content. Okay, and this is going to be used to align the flex items. Now there are two properties I want to show you. The first one is justify content, and then if you scroll a little bit down, there is another one which is called align items. Okay, and you're going to see what's the difference between one and the other. So allow me just one moment here, and let's go back to the justify content property. Now here what we're going to do, I'm not going to use the Visual Studio Code anymore because I want to make this chapter a little bit short for you. So let's go ahead and use the example that we have here at W3 Schools. So the justify content property is used to align flex items. So if you go ahead and you use the justify content, you can use a couple of value. You have center, then you go ahead and you have flex start. You also have flex end. You also have the space around value. And I believe the last one is space between. Okay, so if you want to take a look at them real quick, I'm going to show you. And let's go ahead and let's start with the justify content to the center. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to remove this. And we are going to use, let's use the same as the example. Let's hit try it yourself here. And okay, we're going to justify the content to the center. Okay, let's do that. So let's do justify content, and then let's make it to go to the center. If I hit save, now my welcome page is going to change. Let's hit refresh. And now they have all been aligned to the center. Now I'm going to remove again 12 of these just so you can see the example better. I'm going to hit save. Let's hit refresh. And boom, now you see it's not arranged from left to right, it's actually center. That's what it does, is aligning it to the center. Next thing you want to do is go ahead and actually try the next property, which is flex start. What this is going to do is move all your items to the beginning of the line. So if we go ahead and we use the flex start property in justify content, that's what you're going to see right now. So let's hit save. Going back to our welcome page, let's hit refresh, and boom, now it's at the beginning. And you can also use the flex end instead of start, flex end, and it'll, you might guess, arrange all the items to the end of the container. So let's refresh, and boom, you see now they have been rearranged to the end. So those are a couple of values that you can use when you use the justify content property here with the Flexbox. Now let's move on to the other one. The other one is the space around and the space between. So let's use first space around so that you can see what that value does. Space around property, hit save, going back to our code, hit refresh, boom. It creates a space around the items, you see, at the beginning and at the end, same thing. And it tries to make it even between them, okay? So it's around them. I'm sorry, it's around them. It's around the whole item. Now, if you go ahead and you change this from space around to space between, what it's going to do is that it's going to give them a space, but not all around the item, but actually just between them, between one and the other. So the space that you see here right now at the beginning of the number 1 and at the end of number 3, it's gonna disappear as soon as I hit refresh, because we just use space between right now. So let's hit save, let's hit refresh, and boom. Now it's just giving some space between the items, not around them. Hope that makes sense. Okay, so now let's go ahead and let's see the next one. And the next one we're going to take a look at is the align items property. Now this is going to help you align items from top to bottom, because the justify content property allows you to arrange items horizontally. Now this one that you see here, which is the align items property, is going to help you arrange items vertically. Okay, So let's take a look at that property, and well, we're gonna have to give a display height to this just so that you can see it. So let's just give it a height. Let's use same as the example, 200 pixels. Hit save. Now let's hit refresh. Okay, now I'm going to remove the justified content property here. Okay, and going back to the flex container, let's go ahead and let's use the align items property, and we're going to try different values. So align items property, first thing we're going to do is center all the items. So going back to our welcome page, I already hit Control S to save it. Let's hit refresh. And boom, you see now it has been arranged to the center, but in the vertical position, right? If you want, we can give this a little bit more of height. Let's make it 300 pixels. And boom, you see? Okay, so it's still center. It's been aligned to the center. Now, the next value you will see on align items is to same flex start and then also flex end. So let's try that out. Let's use flex start. So flex start first, hit save, going back to our welcome page, refresh, and it puts this at the beginning of the flex, and then you can go ahead and you can rearrange this also at the end. So let's go back to the flex container, and we're going to use flex end. Okay, so instead of flex start, we're going to hit flex end. Save this information, let's hit refresh, and boom, now they have been rearranged at the end. Now you see, this is aligning things vertically. It's not moving them all the way to the end on the right. It's moving them at the end to the bottom. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, now other thing you can see here with the align property, oh, it's the stretch. So with this property, you can also stretch your items. So let's try that out just so you can see what it does. If you go ahead and you use the value stretch, let's hit save, going back to our welcome page, refresh, and boom, you see it stretches each item on the container. So it makes every item larger. Okay, and let's keep on going. So the baseline property, the baseline value, it just align items such as their bases align. So this depends on different font sizes that you have. I'm just gonna give you the quick example here at W3 Schools. If you hit here, try it yourself. You will see that you have 4 items, right? Now, each of these items have different fonts. Like the first division is an H1. So this is a paragraph. H1. Now this is an H6. So the font is H6. This is an H3. And then the fourth one, it's a small font, as you can see. Okay, now the baseline for each of them, since you know the font is different, like one is bigger, the other one is smaller, is going to make all the items rearrange. That when you use align items baseline, it rearranges depending upon the font size, the baseline they have. Okay, so as it says here, the align items baseline, it aligns the flex items such as their baselines align. So in other words, you see here the number 1, that's an H1. Now, number 2 is an H6. So since it's smaller, the baseline is different. So this makes the arrangement a little bit different. Same thing for the third and the fourth item. So I hope this makes sense, but if it doesn't, it's okay. Honestly, when I'm coding a website, I barely use the baseline value. But if you want to know more about this, feel free to get into W3 Schools, read a little bit more about it, or just send me a message, okay? And you can text me via Instagram and I'll be happy to help. Okay, so let's be done with the value, with the property align items, okay? I'm going to close this here so that we don't have much things open. And now we are going to go ahead and see the next one, which is going to be the align content property. Now this property is used to align the flex lines, okay? So let me go ahead and give you an example here. If you see in these lines, they use 600 pixels of height of the container. So with the flex wrap property, they set up a wrap to demonstrate the align content. So if you want to see this real quick, we're gonna hit here where it says try it yourself. Okay, let me show you what they mean with the align content. If I go ahead and I remove this, let's remove the space between, I'll run the code. You see, right now, there's nothing. There's no such space between one item and the other. Now, if we go back and we add the align content space between value, when we hit run, it's aligning the contents between each others. You see? It's giving a space between each of them. So let me give you another example. It's like the previous example we saw when we were taking a look at the justify content property. So in the justify content property, we were given a space, but it was horizontal. So the difference is that with the align content property, you're not giving the space horizontal. You're giving the space vertical. That's as best I can explain you this. If you still have questions, comment below, okay? So another thing that you can do is also the space around, which is the same as justify content, just in the vertical order. So you see it gives a space around the number 1 and 2, 1 and 2, right? It's not between like the previous example. It's actually around the number 1. So it'll give a space on top and at the bottom of number 1, not just between 1 and 5, like in this demonstration here. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. And then stretch, yes, you can also use the align content stretch value, and what it's gonna do is the same thing as we saw in the justify content example. It's just gonna stretch all your items here. Okay, so the other thing you will see is that you can align the content to the center, and it'll obviously align all the content to the center. You see this example? But again, this is just aligning the content in a vertical way from top to bottom, not from left to right. For that, you will use the justify content property. Okay, and it'll also do flex start. If you go ahead and actually use this align content flex start, it'll make all the items arranged to the start. And if you use the flex end, let's just use it right now here so you can see. If you use the flex end, if I run the code, then it's going to arrange all the elements at the end. So this is pretty self-explanatory. I hope it's making sense for you. Now, here's something very important. If you want to have everything perfectly centered, you're going to use a combination between justify the content and also align items. Because if those two properties are being aligned to the center, then the flex item will be perfectly centered. Okay, so let me show you this on the code. So right now, we are going to justify the content. Okay, we're going to justify the content to the center, and we are going to align the items to the center. Okay, so let's just do one by one. I'm going to remove this one. Let's hit save. First, we're justifying all the content to the center. So let's hit refresh. So see, now this has been ordered to the center. Now, if I go ahead and I use the align items to the center, let's hit save. Now let's hit refresh. Now this is aligning all the items to the center. So now this has been perfectly centered because we have been using the two properties, justify content and then align items. So if you use a combination of these two, you're going to have a perfect center items in your Flexbox. Okay, perfect. So so far I have tried to make this video as quick as possible, but so far we cover all the properties and all the values that they show here on the example. Okay, moving on, we're going to take a look at another topic, which is going to be the flex items. Okay, and I believe that you should also know what flex items are and how you can use them, but I'm not going to code this into our Visual Studio Code. I'll just explain to you what it does in the actual code that you see here at W3 Schools. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the child elements, which are the items. These are the child elements, number 1, 2, 3, and 4. which we already have. So those are the items. So we can do so many things with the items itself without just applying the style to the container. We can go ahead and we can order them. We can use flex grow. We can shrink them. We can use flex basis and a lot of properties. So let's take a look at the first one. The first one is order property. This is specified the order of the flex item. So let me show you an example. You see this code right here? We're going to apply this to our Visual Studio Code. So right now, the order that we have is 1, 2, 3, right? Because the items are listed like this, 1, 2, 3. But what happens if I don't want 1 to be 1? I want 1 to be 3 and 3 to be 1. If I want to arrange those two. Well, for that, then we're going to be using the order property. So for this specific example, I am going to have to use an inline CSS syntax, okay? Just to apply this specifically style for this particular item. So let's go ahead and let's add some style, okay? And then what we are going to do is set up the order. Hold on. Okay, we're going to set up the order, and we're going to set up the same order that you see here. Okay, so the order is going to be, okay, so we want number 1 to come 3 and 3 to come number 1. So what I'm going to do is set up the order here for this one to be 3. And I'm going to copy the same inline style, and I am going to apply this style to the third item, and I want this third item to be number 1. Okay, so now let's hit save. Going back to our welcome page, now you will see that number 1 is going to switch to the end and number 3 will be the first one. So here we go, refresh, and boom. You see how now this changes? Now number 2 is at the beginning because we didn't assign any value to number 2, and the first one that it's being actually ordered here, it's number 0. So number 2 is actually the first one. Now I hope this makes sense, but if you want to take a look at what I am saying to you, I'm going to give also an order to number 2, okay? So let's go ahead and let's give an inline style, and let's just leave this as number 2. Just so this can be arranged better. Now what's number 2 will be number 2, number 3 will be number 1, and number 1 will be number 3. You see? 3, 2, 1. Simple as that. I mean, you can also use the reverse row, the row reverse or column reverse, but not really if you actually want to set up a specific order to one specific item, not just to all of them. That's why this is very important for you to know, that you can actually modify just one item and make it go in the order that you prefer. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Now let's move on to the next style that you can apply to each item, and that'll be the flex grow. You can make any item grow in any type of order and any type of size. So in the example here, we have apply a flex grow of 1 to number 1, you see? Then the flex grow of 1 to number 2, and then the third flex grow is a size of 8 to number 3. So number 3 is actually bigger because the style applied to number 3 is actually 8, not 1. So I hope this makes sense. But that's how you can apply a specific grow to a specific item. Now let's keep on moving. Now we have the shrink property, same as the grow property. You can also assign just one item to be shrink. Okay, so if we go ahead and we set up the flex shrink to 0 to number 3, number 3 is not going to shrink because the number 0, it's being applied to him, meaning that it's not going to shrink, just like the others. The other has shrink, I'm guessing, because of the size of the screen, right? And the amount of the items they have. Well, all of them will shrink except for number 3. Okay, so you can apply the shrink to 0 to make one item not to shrink if you want to, if that's what you want to on your website. Now let's move on and let's take a look at the next one. Now this is flex basis. Now, the flex basis property, it specifies the initial length of a flex item. So you can make the length, the basis length of any item be whatever pixels that you want. In this case, they are applying a flex basis of 200 pixels to number 3. As you can take a look, the initial is 200 pixels. That's the size for number 3. And that's how it's going to stay if you want to. Okay, now the next property is the flex property. This is a shorthand for all the other values that we've seen so far for flex grow, shrink, and flex basis. So you simply have to establish to flex the first item is going to be grow. So if grow is going to be 0, then we have the shrink flex. Flex is going to be 0, and then the flex basis will be 200 pixels on division number 3. This should look like this. Let's hit try it yourself. See, it's going to look like this. Right now, as you can see, we have set up a specific style just by using the shorthand flex. Okay, so to number 3, which is the item that we have assigned this flex to, you have pretty much a flex growth of 0. Okay, a shrink of 0, so it doesn't grow, it doesn't shrink, and it has 200 pixels of an initial length. And as you can see, number 3, that's the reason why it's bigger than the rest of the items. Okay, now let's move on to the next one, which is the align self property. This specifies the alignment for the selected item inside of the flex container. So it overrides the default alignment by the container with the align item property. So this is just like setting up a specific alignment to just one item. Again, I mean, all these values, all these properties you're taking a look at, you're probably going to assign them inline using inline CSS. And it's because you just want this applied to one specific item out of your entire container. So in this example, they have given a style align self of center. So number 3 is center, and then the other 3 items are different. Okay, and you can do the same thing if you can set up an align self flex start or end. So if you can see that example, you see here, if you go ahead and you set up the division number 2, it's at start, so it's being aligned on top. And then number 3 is flex end, so it's aligned to the bottom because one it's starting and then the other one is finishing. So again, remember the align property, it aligns your items from top to bottom. Okay, let's keep on moving. And well, I guess those are all the items and all the possible properties you will find when aligning a specific item into your container, into your flex container. Okay, so one last thing we want to talk about is how to make the flex responsive, and you are going to make this with media queries. It's very, very simple. If you take a look at this example right here, it tells you exactly how you are able to set up a responsible flex so that when you shrink your screen, something happens. And in fact, let's take a look at the example that we see here at W3 Schools. Okay, so see, what you're going to do with media queries is have a division. I'm simply going to copy and paste this into our code. Let's go back to our code. I am going to clean these divisions, and I'm going to copy this specifically. So let's hit save. Going back to our welcome page, refresh. And the other thing we want to do is delete all the style, because I want you to see how this is going to be rearranged as soon as we are starting to apply the style. So the first thing they did here at W3 Schools is set up a box sizing to the border box. So the box sizing is border box, right? So let's do that. If we hit save, going back to our code, refresh. Okay, all the style has been removed. Now, next thing they did, as you can see here, they apply a flex container. And we do have a flex container in here. You see, it's this division, and it has 2 items inside. number 1 and number 2. Okay, so to the flex container, they applied the display flex. They did a flex wrap of wrap, which means the items will be aligned horizontal. Then they have a font size of 30 pixels and they align the text to the center. So let's apply all this style. Hit save. Going back to our code, let's hit refresh. And boom, this has been already applied, right? Now, the next thing they did in here is apply a flex item to the flex item left, which, as you can see here, they have added a class of flex item left to the first div. Okay, so to that class in particular, they apply a background color, a padding, and a flex of 50%. So let's do that. Let's apply this style here. Hit save, going back to our code, hit refresh. And boom, you see now number 1, it has been very well aligned. And it has a really cool style now, rather than number 2, which is just a simple number. Now, to number 2, which is the flex item to the right, they assign a different background color, a different padding, and the flex is also 50%, meaning that it'll arrange in 50% of the screen width. Okay, so let's add that code, hit save, going back to our welcome page, refresh. So see, now you have the 2 items. Now, if you resize your window right now, they remain the same. 1 and 2 are right next to each other's. Now, what happened when you add a media query? Well, when you add a media query, you can make 1 and 2 go one to the top and the other one to the bottom, which I'm guessing this is what they did in this example. So let's go back here to our code. I'm going to maximize the window again. Okay, let's go back to the editor and we're going to apply the media. And see, this is very simple what they did here. They set up a media query and they set up this media so that when the maximum width is 800 pixels or higher, then the flex item to the right and the flex item to the left are going to change to 100%, meaning that if it's going to actually extend in the whole screen. So if it's 800 pixels or less, if it's 800 pixels or less, you will see this reflected. If it's higher than 800 pixels, then you will see one right next to the other, which is all the style that we have given here on top. So now let's hit save, going back to our code, let's hit refresh. Okay, so as you can see right now, nothing happens because the screen width is not 800 pixels. But as soon as I start shrinking this, if the screen gets to be 800 pixels or less, then these 2 items will rearrange to make this website responsive, and they're gonna be one on top of the other. Boom, you see? So here, my screen is like around 800 pixels and actually less, because now they have been resized and rearranged one on top of the other. So that's how you can make the Flexbox responsible using media queries. So I hope this entire chapter, which I know it has been super long, it has helped all of you. I did my best to try to upload this video today. I had a lot of work today, to be quite honest, but I am not going to disappoint all of you guys. If I promise I will upload a video, I will do so. So I hope that you guys enjoy this video. If you have any type of questions about this topic, remember you can leave a comment or you can leave your questions in the comment section below. I'll make sure to reply as soon as I can. And well, if you've liked this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. If you're new to my channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And remember that you can always ask Lixi. Bye everyone, and see you again in the next episode.